How many points should you have when you teach students? A lot of people will say 3, and I would disagree. Let me explain to you why I think you should have one clear point when you teach students. After over 20 years in youth ministry, I try to only have 1 point and encourage you to do the same. First of all, 1 point is easier to learn. Students can walk away having learned one thing. For every point you add, you make it more likely they will forget at least one of the points and not remember the other one as clearly as they would have. And if we want students to act on what we teach, then they have to remember what was taught so they can also remember the action step beyond the information. And let's be honest, how many times have you been asked and forgotten what all of your points were a few days after you taught? I know that's happened to me. If we can't remember all of our points, how will our students remember them? And if they can't remember them, how will they act on them? Along those lines, 1 point is also simpler for accountability. Whether you were talking with a student, sending a note to parents, or having a small group leader follow up with a student and ask them how they did at putting into practice the teaching, it will be much easier if there was a focus on 1 point than if there were a variety of points. Now, what they did may look different from other students, but it will be clear whether or not the student put this point into practice. 1 point is also easier to teach, less to prepare, and less to remember for you and me as the one doing the teaching. Everything revolves around the one main thing you want to communicate. You don't have to worry about alliteration, rhyming, or any of those mnemonic devices. Just teach the main point that comes from your biblical text. That's it. That's also easier if you're developing volunteers to also teach for you, whether it's a large group or a small group. 1 point is much easier for them as well. I do want to say that 1 point in a lesson can and probably should have multiple options for action steps. Most likely you have a spectrum of students in the room, from those who showed up for the very first time to those who've been following Jesus for years. Be sure to give a few different options or to challenge them to think through the best way to put this teaching into practice that fits each unique person. What if you have more points that you really believe you need to communicate? Then you have more lessons, a series built around those points. Take the time you need and that each point deserves to build a lesson teaching each point, not one lesson rushing through all the points. If you catch yourself saying, I don't have much time left, or I'm over time, I want to get through this next point pretty quickly, you're saying that one isn't as important, or you're saying you didn't prepare well. Instead of saying that, say, hey, there's 2 more things I want to share about this. We're going to talk about that over the next 2 weeks. Or utilize the media that we have now, like YouTube and social media, and say, hey, we're going to focus on this one main point today, but there's 2 other things I kind of wanted to talk about, and so I've made a video for that, and that's available on our YouTube channel. Teach with 1 point. That's my point today.